Always a party at Patchworks. Let's get this party started. Woot woot! Hi everyone, this is Julie from Patchworks, and today we are talking tree skirts. Tree skirts are a fun decoration for your holiday tree and also makes a wonderful wedding gift. We are going to talk about a fun and simple product that we have been using a lot lately, and then we are also going to look at a fun pattern that is quick and easy and uses strips. Behind me I have 3 different versions of the June Tailor Quilt As You Go pre-printed batting. So we've been playing a lot with the June Tailor Quilt As You Go products, and this particular product is a really awesome sewing project that makes your life so much simpler and quicker because you can just whip this up and you are quilting it as you're piecing it, so there's no need to quilt it after the fact, and then you can just cut it out and bind it. You can see here we have on this side here we have the very basic single wedge. So there's 16 wedges in this circle. We have half them folded in half. So we have 16. You can use as many fabrics as you'd like. This particular one, I believe we used 8. We repeated 8 twice. But what we did here in the store now is that we put together packs of 16 so that you could have 16 unique fabrics. Here we used 2.5-inch strips, and we took advantage of having some really fun elements and super cute. And then in this one here, we did a combination of wedges and pieced wedges. So you really can make it your own. What I've also seen are some alternate wedges that have some fun applique in it, or some really amazing intricate embroidery or quilting to show off your stitching designs. In here, this particular batting can finish to a 40 diameter tree skirt. So the cool thing about that is that you can use one regular piece of fabric, width of fabric, for your backing. No need to piece anything. So that's really nice. You just need 1.25 yards. When you're working with circles, one thing that's really important is your bias binding. So what's the difference between regular binding and bias binding? So oftentimes when we make a quilt, we just cut fabric on the width of fabric, 2.5-inch strips, sew them together, press them, and stitch them around the edge of our quilt. When you have a curve here, when you use a straight edge fabric, what can happen is that you have wrinkles and it might look icky and you're just really frustrated. Bias fabric is cut on the diagonal of fabric, and so sometimes making bias binding on our own can be kind of a pain, okay, because you're having to figure out how to cut it and then piece it, and it just can get a little bit messy. So we have a product in the store here, bias binding on a roll, that is just fabulous for any tree skirt, these tree skirts in particular. So with this tree skirt, you will need 6 yards of bias binding to go around the diameter and then up your slit and around the center cutout. You would want a little bit more if you want to add in some ties. So you could simply manipulate this and stitch it a little bit more to add ties if you wanted to have ties on your tree skirt. This batting here, let's just open it up so that we can look at it. My crazy little rag snips, not necessarily the piece that the scissor that you use for opening up your packages. So we have some great, it's an 80-20 batting. Has some lines on it so that you can place things. Really easy. When we get started here, before we would start piecing our top on it, I would take my back piece and layer my batting on top, and I would stitch on the dotted line all the way around so that I have a nice cut line for after it's all together and I don't need to guess. So that is a little trick as you're putting this together. For cutting out your wedges, we have this cool template in here, and this one is one that we had from a previous sample that we made. I really like it. It is out of some really nice template plastic. It has some lines so that you can use it for lining up your 2.5 inch strip sets as you are trimming them down. And I also want to show you how nicely this fits on a fat eighth for the fat eighth packs that we sell. Let's look at it overhead here. So, oh, I have a mess on my cutting table already. Oh no. Okay, so here is my fat eighth. Of course I would press it before I would cut it out, but you can see here how a fat eighth works really nice for these wedges. Of course, if you are going to be using less fabrics and just more wedges from a fabric, you are able to cut more efficiently, but it is really nice to know that you are able to get away with a fat eighth cut here per each wedge. And then you have a little bit left over for some other fun sewing project. So let's look again. We have the simple wedge, we have our strip set, and in this case this was a scrappy strips. I believe we used 8 different fabrics. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different strips here in this to get the whole wedge. And so you could do something where it's a little bit more organized, and I've even seen a fun Bargello pattern out there that is super cool to be able to take advantage of the strips that go around the tree skirt. But this here is really fun because what you can do is you can take some of your favorite focus fabrics here and then use scraps to mix in here. So I know this one came from, I think we were working on a project last year and we had a whole 40 strip set and we were just making all these different coordinated items. We had the tree skirt, some table runners, placemats, and stockings, all that matched, and we had all of this that came from the same 2.5 inch strip set. So sometimes you have just things left over, and so think about how you'd be able to take advantage of that for an item like this. The other tree skirt I want to show you is from this pattern here. It is Kim Schaefer, Little Quilt Company. It is Modern Holiday, and this pattern comes with 3 different projects. So you have the tree skirt, and then you have a wall hanging, and then you have a table runner. And the really fun thing about this pattern is that Kim's newest fabric line that we have upstairs, and we did a fun little easy panel project this weekend with it as well, is inspired by this pattern. So really fun. And this is 2.5 inch friendly. So in this particular tree skirt, it is 8 wedges, not 16. So the wedges are a little bit bigger. This tree skirt finishes, I should know this off the top of my head. The tree skirt finishes, dun, dun, dun. It's a little bit bigger, and we'll talk about, it's a 54 inch diameter tree skirt, okay, 54 inches. And Kim suggests using 11 or so different fabrics. We put together fun strip sets that are 10 different fabrics. And these coordinate super beautifully with her current fabric line for Christmas that's out. So you could make a wall hanging, you could make the tree skirt, and then you could fill it in with some of the fun novelty prints. So really fun. This strip set has 10 different fabrics in it, so you're getting 2 each of the 10. You will want 2 strip sets in order to make the tree skirt, but you'll have a little bit left over that you'll be able to make the wall hanging fun tree project from the leftovers of this. For this particular project, I just want to show you a couple parts of it. So Heidi went ahead and she made all of the wedges here, okay? So the wedges are put together like this, okay? And then we're going to use a template to cut it out. Each of the wedges that we made are all different. So this isn't some way that you like strip the ones together and then you use a fancy way to cut it apart. We're actually positioning them so that they appear in that slanted diagonal position. In her pattern, we have a full-size template in order to cut out our piece, and that's really nice. Sometimes patterns want you to go and make a copy and expand it, and then you're like, I don't have access to that, or especially this year, you might not want to go to Kinko's, or maybe your Kinko's isn't open. So we have all of the shapes. So this is the shapes for the table runner on here. And then also we have the wedge in the background that we're going to be using for the tree skirt. As you look at this, you say, Julie, I don't want to cut my pattern because I don't want to lose all these other elements. So I'm going to show you a nice, easy way to trace it and then to transfer it onto those wedges for cutting them apart. Let's look overhead here. Let me make some room on my little desk here. And for tracing, there's a couple different things. If you have freezer paper in your sewing room, a big roll of it, that would work just fine. I want to show you a product that we have in store that works really well for pattern transfer. And it is a product that is actually a stabilizer. It's called Stiffy by Sulky. Can we see this here? Let me put it a little bit farther this way. It is $2.79 a yard, and it works for a stabilizer. It's a crisp, firm tearaway stabilizer. You can see through it, and so it works really well for pattern making. So I cut off a length here that was just big enough, about a little bit shy of 3/4 of a yard here, and I'm going to layer it on top of where I need to trace. I'm going to use, for a little weight here, I'm just going to put a couple items here. You might have items in your sewing room that you could use, and I am going to trace it using just that you can see it. I'm going to use my water erasable marker here that's blue so that you'll be able to see it from above. So I'm just going to start here, and I am going to just lightly trace this here. For my straight edges, I am going to use a ruler. And I have this sideways here so that you can, so that it can fit underneath the camera. If I were in my sewing room, I would have this perpendicular to my body, so it'd be a little bit easier. Okay, and then we're going to slide it over here and trace this line. Okay, just like that. We traced it. So you only need to trace one, and your pattern is completely intact, which is a bonus. I'm going to clear this aside, and then I'm going to cut it apart and show you how to transfer it onto your wedges. So I would use my paper scissors for cutting this, or what you can do as well, since this is a stabilizer, if you wanted to, you could even use your rotary cutter and your strip ruler for this edge. So we're going to give ourselves a nice straight line cut here. And then I'm going to repeat on the other part of this wedge. And I'll use my paper scissors to finish up cutting the other parts of it. So now we just have this outside edge. I like to use as long of a cut as I can. Dun, dun, dun. All right. There we go. If you wanted, you could save the rest of your stabilizer for another project, for stabilizing something. And we're going to look at one of our wedges. We are going to want to handle each of them separately. We don't want to risk trying to layer them and hurting anything. Okay, so you can see here that this can line up really nice on our edge. And then what we're going to do, I'm just going to double check our pattern to see if we're lining up this point right here. And I think we are. Oh, no, we are not. Okay, so whatever we're going to do, we're going to want to make sure we're consistent with it. So we're actually going to come down just a little, just like that. So you can either pin this in place, but I have this nice product that I'm going to use. It's called Pattern Stick. And I'm going to spray it on the back side of this to provide a temporary adhesive. Shake it up a little bit. Be careful not to overspray. And it has just a light tack. So we can use it on the front side or the back side, whichever you prefer. We had tacked up the front side here. We just want to make sure we are going to be doing it in the same position, front and back. Okay, really nice, and then we don't have to worry about pins here. I used a very light touch on this back part, so I'm just going to give it a titch more. And then it's actually repositionable. So I'm going to use my strip cutter here for making my cut on this edge. If you had freezer paper, you would lightly iron that into place. I am going to just give a nice straight cut on this edge. Very carefully, you can walk around the edge. If you have a 28mm blade, this would be great. You don't want to use your 60-degree blade, or 60mm blade, that would be too big. And there we go. So that was really simple and fun. You can see here that there is a bias edge here and here. So we want to be very careful when we are sewing these together. I'm just going to cut one more and then we'll talk about layering them together, okay? I'll let you sew them at home on your own, but I just want to show you how we would go about doing that. So we have our tack. We're just going to line this up again, and this was kind of like there. It doesn't need to be exactly exact on both sides, and if you needed to add a little bit more tackiness for the next time, you can. I think we're going to. You would definitely put it on your stabilizer piece or whatever pattern you had rather than putting it directly on your fabric. So this is different from the spray-based. The spray-based is a little bit more, it has a higher tack to it. You want to make sure as you're trimming these that you don't have another wedge underneath, right? That would not be a good thing. Oops. Time to change my blade. I think I said that last time, and I didn't do it yet. Oh my goodness. And we're going to go around. Make sure to be careful as you go around. Don't want any emergency room visits, especially this weekend. This one we have a nice edge, so we don't need to worry about cleaning that one up. And then we're going to come and do the small, just like that. Okay. So when we piece these together, we're going to have a bias on a straight, okay? So we will very, very carefully layer these up. We don't have to worry about any intersections, which is really nice. But because this is on the bias, we are going to want to make sure that we pin, 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 and just very slowly piece it all the way. So this one is a traditionally pieced quilted tree skirt that you would want to have quilted after it is together. And with all of that piecing in it, it would be important to provide a little bit of quilting so that it all stays nice together. This one finishes at 54 inches, so you will need 2 widths of fabric. Don't stress about having that pieced edge fall into where the split might happen. Just quilt it up, and then after it's all quilted, go ahead and cut out your circle and then splice it and bind as desired with your bias binding. So if you've never tried a tree skirt, really fun, great project, easy finish, and if you've never thought about it as a fun wedding gift or a fun holiday gift, it can be a great gift item. Oftentimes, people may not want to either make a wedding quilt for someone or might not understand the style of what that bride and groom might be. So having a fun holiday memory for their new tree can be a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us today. Happy quilting, and we'll see you soon.